All right, welcome. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the incredible invisible systems that bring pretty much every single product into our lives. I mean, from the food you eat to the phone you're probably holding, it all depends on something we call supply chain management. So let's just dive right in.
So let me kick things off with a question for you. What does your morning cup of coffee have in common with your smartphone? I mean, on the surface, not a whole lot, right? But the answer is that they are both the final product of this massive, carefully coordinated global journey, a journey we call the supply chain. So, what exactly is a supply chain? Well, think of it as the entire network that takes raw materials, turns them into finished products, and then gets them into your hands. It's this whole web of people, companies, information, and resources that honestly makes the world of commerce we know even possible. It's never just one company, it's a whole ecosystem working in sync. Now, I know that definition can sound a little bit abstract, so let's make this way more tangible with a simple, and I think for many of us, a very enjoyable example. Let's think about the journey of a single beer. It all starts out in a field, right? With farmers growing barley and hops. Those raw materials then get shipped off to be malted and brewed. From there, the finished beer gets packaged up in bottles and cans, which are then distributed to warehouses, and finally, they land in a store where you can buy it. It seems like a pretty nice, neat straight line. But here is the big twist. For most of the things we use every single day, it is almost never that simple. It's almost never a linear chain. The reality is, well, it's a lot more complex, and frankly, a whole lot more interesting.
To really see what I'm talking about, let's move away from a simple chain and look at a complex web. And there's no better example for this than the automotive industry. This is where things get really fascinating.
See, in the car world, it's not a chain. It's a multi-layered web. A car company, what we call an OEM, doesn't just get a finished engine delivered to its door. No way. The process starts way, way back with what are called Tier 3 suppliers. These are the folks providing raw materials like minerals or plastics. They sell those to Tier 2 suppliers, who turn them into basic parts, like semiconductors. Then those parts go to Tier 1 suppliers, who assemble them into something bigger, like a whole engine assembly, which finally goes to the car manufacturer. It's this incredible network where every single tier depends on all the others. Okay, so if it's this ridiculously complicated web of companies and parts all relying on each other, what's the actual point of managing it all? I mean, why go through all that trouble? It's clearly not just about moving stuff around. There's a single unifying goal behind all of it. And that ultimate goal, the thing that drives every single decision, is maximizing something called the supply chain surplus. This concept is absolutely central to everything. So what in the world is supply chain surplus? Think of it as the total economic wealth that the entire network creates. It's not just about one company's profit at the very end. No, it's a difference between what you, the customer, believe a product is worth and the total cost that everyone in the chain had to spend to make it and get it to you. This simple formula, this is everything. The entire game is about making the gap between customer value and supply chain cost as massive as possible. You can do that one of two ways. Either you increase what the customer is willing to pay by making the product better or more convenient, or you find efficiencies to decrease the total cost of the whole process. And of course, the real winners do both at the same time. Let's put some numbers on this to make it really clear. Imagine there's a new smartphone, and you, the customer, decide it's worth $800 to you. Now, let's say the total cost for absolutely everyone involved, from the mining companies to the factory workers to the shipping lines, adds up to $500. Well, the supply chain surplus is the difference, $300. That $300 is the total pie of new wealth that was created, and that's what gets shared among all the partners in that chain. And this really gets to the heart of modern supply chain thinking. A truly successful supply chain isn't one where one company at the end just squeezes all the profit for itself. No, a successful one is where all the partners work together to make the entire pie, that total surplus, as big as humanly possible for everyone. Okay, so we get it. The goal is to maximize this surplus. But how do huge companies actually manage this mind-boggling complexity to make that happen? Well, it's done through 3 different layers of decision-making. You can think about this management happening on 3 levels. At the very top, you've got strategy. These are the huge long-term decisions, like where to build a new factory, that set the stage for years. That strategy then creates the boundaries for the next layer, which is planning, things like forecasting demand for the next few months. And finally, both of those top layers dictate the day-to-day, on-the-ground operational decisions, like which specific truck is going to deliver which package tomorrow. I absolutely love this analogy because it just makes the relationship so clear. The big strategic decisions, like where you decide to build your warehouses, that's like setting up the entire game board and writing the rules. The planning and operational decisions, well, that's how you actually play the game, day in and day out, within those rules you already set. So, here's the crucial takeaway. When you boil it all down, it doesn't matter if we're talking about the simple journey of a beer or the incredibly complex web that builds a car. The fundamental goal is always the same. It's about managing every single step to maximize the total value for the customer while at the same time relentlessly driving down the total cost for everyone involved. That's the engine of supply chain management. All right, so let's bring all this back to you for a second. Imagine you run a small online business. Now, based on everything we just talked about, if your orders suddenly doubled overnight, what would you do? Which decisions are purely operational, like what do you need to do right now? And what kind of bigger planning or even strategic questions does that sudden shock force you to ask about the future? It's a puzzle that literally every business, big or small, has to solve.